Okay, let me get the obvious thing out of the way. If you notice, there's a little something going on my nose. So I wanted to tell you about it. Some of you are saying, I bet you put your nose where it had no business. I started to tell you, because I thought it might be believable, that I went and got a nose ring and my grandkids yanked on it, and this was the result. Somehow, I didn't think you would believe that either. So here's the ugly truth. My regular checkup at the dermatologist, they discovered there was something they needed to look at, and they looked at it very closely and said to me, you have a melanoma on your nose. I said, that's not a good place. When you make your living in television, you need this to happen on your back or your leg or your rear end or any place. However, thankfully, doctors got all of the melanoma, the cancer cells, out, and then there was another surgery to try to put my nose back together, and actually, to be honest with you, it looks fantastic compared to what it looked like just a week ago. So be glad that I didn't come out here and scare the living daylights out of you. Now, let's get to the show. So when was the last time you went through your refrigerator and your pantry to see if there were some items there that were beyond their sell-by or their use-by dates? Look, it really hurts me to throw away those green beans that were supposed to be used by August of 2011. Or the mayonnaise that really would have been good on one of your sandwiches when your 10-year-old son was just a lap baby. But come on, sometimes you gotta let it go. See, I feel the same way about elected officials. There are some I really like. I like them a lot. They're good and decent people. They show no signs of having been corrupted by the nasty process that politics has become. But like those jars and cans in the cupboard, there comes a time when it's time to go. I like term limits for people who are elected, and in fact, for those who are appointed. You know, it's hard for me to believe that there are only 535 people in a nation of 330 million who are capable of serving in Congress. Now, I'm not quite as cynical as the Observer, who opined that we could pick out 535 random names from the phone book and do as well. I'll say it again. There are some truly great people from both parties who serve unselfishly and honorably and who went to Washington for all the right reasons. But running water is usually preferable to stagnant water. And even that porcelain device in your home was designed so that you flush it with fresh water regularly. The argument against term limits is that the most effective term limit is an election, and voters can always send somebody home. But in 90% of races, the incumbent wins re-election because it's hard to overcome the power of incumbency. Now, we've got term limits for the president and other members in the executive branch. So if we really believe in three equal branches, then shouldn't we either term limit the legislative and, yes, the judicial, or else take the term limits off the executive branch? Make them equal indeed. I worked to get term limits in Arkansas, and I lived with those limits that ended my own run as governor. To the surprise of some, I believed in term limits more after serving. Now, there were some legislators who fought term limits and said, well, they just couldn't learn the state budget in a mere 8 years in the state Senate. To that, I'd say, you can go to medical school and be a doctor in 4 years. Now, the budget may not be that simple. It certainly isn't harder than being a physician. Here's my thought. If it takes a person that long to understand how the state spends the taxpayers' money, they need to go home and do something simpler. Simple as that. I mean, term limits mean that there are some fresh ideas and experiences coming into the process. And by the way, when people get first elected, they're usually immune from the pressure of lobbyists and bureaucrats because they come in not trusting them. And usually they've run against them. But after a while, amidst the trappings of power, the relationships from the friends back home start to dim, and the relationships with the institutionalized power brokers grow stronger and more influential. Would we lose some good people? Oh, yeah. But we would finally get rid of some really bad people and corrupt people. And I'm willing to make that trade. How about you? Think it's okay?